The suffering servant. These passages provide the most detailed description of what the Messiah would go through, his sufferings and exaltation. He would not grow up among royalty, 53:2 of Yeshayahu Isaiah, for before him he grew up like a young plant, like a root out of dry ground. He was not well formed or especially handsome. We saw him, but his appearance did not attract us. He would experience intense suffering, 52:14, just as many were appalled at him, because he was so disfigured that he didn't even seem human, and simply no longer looked like a man, 53:3. People despised and avoided him, a man of pains, well acquainted with illness, like someone from whom people turned their faces. He was despised, we did not value him. He would be despised, beaten, 53:4. In fact, it was our diseases he bore, our pains from which he suffered, yet he regarded him as punished, stricken, and afflicted by God. Crushed, 53:5. But he was wounded because of our crimes, crushed because of our sins. The disciplining that makes us whole fell on him, and by his bruises we are healed. Oppressed, 53:7. Though mistreated, he was submissive. He did not open his mouth, like a lamb led to be slaughtered, like a sheep silent before its shears. He did not open his mouth. And killed, 53:8. After forcibly arrest and sentencing, he was taken away, and none of his generation protested his being cut off from the land of the living, for the crimes of my people, who deserved the punishment themselves. Even though he had done nothing wrong, 53:9, he was given a grave among the wicked. In his death he was with a rich man, although he had done no violence, and had said nothing deceptive. The purpose of his suffering was to startle many nations, 52:15. So now he will startle many nations. Because of him, kings will be speechless, for they will see what they had not been told. They will ponder things they had never heard. The Hebrew word yazai can be translated as either startle or sprinkle. Yeshayahu Isaiah 52:53 of Yeshua as the suffering servant. The more accurate translation is sprinkle. This is the same word used in Vayikra Leviticus for sprinkling sacrificial food. Leviticus 4:6, 16:14, and 19. The Kohen, the priest, is to dip his finger in the blood and sprinkle some of the blood 7 times in the presence of Adonai, in front of the curtain of the sanctuary. Sprinkle it with his finger on the ark cover toward the east, and in front of the ark cover he is to sprinkle some of the blood with his finger 7 times, thus purifying it and setting it apart from the uncleannesses of the people of Israel, indicating that the servant's disfiguring death would function as a sacrifice for many nations. Messiah's suffering was to bear the sorrows, grief, and iniquities of the nation as a guilt offering. Yeshayahu Isaiah 53:4-6, 10 and 12. In fact, it was our diseases he bore, his pains from which he suffered, yet we regarded him as punished, stricken, and afflicted by God. But he was wounded because of our crimes, crushed because of our sins. The discipline that makes us whole fell on him, and by his bruises we are healed. We all, like sheep, went astray. We turned each one to his own way. Yet Adonai laid on him the guilt of all of us. Yet it pleased Adonai to crush him with illness, to see if he would present himself as a guilt offering. If he does, he will see his offspring, and he will prolong his days, and at his hand Adonai's desire will be accomplished. Therefore I will assign him a share with the great. He will divide the spoil with the mighty, for having exposed himself to death, and being counted among the sinners, while actually bearing the sin of many and interceding for the offenders, and to justify many, 53:11. After this ordeal, he will see satisfaction by his knowing, pain and sacrifice. My righteous servant makes many righteous. It is for their sins that he suffers. But the servant would ultimately be exalted and receive a great reward. 52:13. See how my servant will succeed. He will be raised up, exalted, highly honored. Adonai's servant will succeed, act wisely, This sacrificial work of the servant provides the basis for the redemption and restoration of the nation of Israel and the Gentiles, non-believers, and the establishment of the Messianic kingdom. 54:1 to 57:21.